Okay, come let's look at this case study question 2 from your revision package. All right. So I will do a quick breakdown of your extracts individually, and then I'll touch on the subsequent questions that follows. All right, so breaking this case study down, all right, very important message to all of you is basically your case study is a case study question. So that means you need to find your answer from your case study. All right, you need to find your answers from your case study. If not, it's not going to be a case study question altogether. All right, so that's why please, as much as possible, read your extract and find out the necessary points. What's this? Okay, let's ignore that. Okay, so now let's look at this first extract. We break the first extract paragraph down. So first extract paragraph, you can see that what we are given here. All right, we are given that there was an earthquake as well as tsunami. All right, and this caused hundreds of factories shut across Japan. Toyota, Nissan said they were halting production. All right, so they had a few they evacuated their workers from 2 plants in the worst affected region. Plants make up 420,000 small cars each year, mainly for export. So you can see, firstly, the extent of this damage, of the destruction. All right, as well as the impact of this destruction on production processes, on the producers. How does this then translate to the economy, at the economy level? All these factories, they are productive. All these are productive means of producing your goods and services. Right? All these, they get shut down. If not, they cannot be utilized at all. All this will affect your LRAS, right? LRAS will shift left. Because clearly, you can see that, all right, quantity, because the number of factories that are productive and all has reduced. If you are old enough to watch video during the news and everything, right, they show the extent of the destruction. They show the tsunami when the water hit, the houses, lives that were lost, all right, the factories that were destroyed. All this affect the quantity. Even if your factory is still in one piece, all right, the quality-wise, it will still suffer. Okay? So quality both actually fell. So impact here is quite clear, your LRAS 4. Okay? Good question. Does it affect SRAS also? SRAS is affected by? So cost of production, do you think it will be impacted? Yes, cost of production here will be impacted. Why? Why? Less resources means that your producers will have to compete for these resources, resulting in higher factor price. You have to pay more to hire them. You have to pay more to buy your machines and so forth.
Actually, the cost also involves fixing the machines.
That is not part of producing it. Okay, but one way I can go about extending that further is to talk about how, because of disruptions to these production processes, right, costs actually increase because less efficient. So inefficiency actually result in higher costs. Okay? Alright, because previously I have machine helping me produce. Right now, if I return to manual labor, my cost of production definitely increase. Okay? So it's actually very commonsensical. It's just about how you put it into the point, linking it back. Okay? Second paragraph. Okay, this part here. Japanese firms and investors are racing to repatriate their assets. This phrase here suggests to us that where are these Japanese firms and investors? Overseas. So when there is something that happens back home, your main base will be your HQ, right? Your headquarters. So when there's disruption, likelihood is that you'll withdraw your foreign investment to come up with a remedy, come up with a solution as to how to best move forward. Alright, should I consolidate my home production or should I still keep my production overseas? So you may have to re-strategize everything. But at least at this point in time, a lot of them, they are trying to repatriate their assets so that they can rebuild Japan because the damage done is very extensive. They need a huge amount of time to rebuild that particular area, especially the production plants, etc. Okay?
What does repatriate?
Send home. Yeah, when you go overseas, you repatriate things, you send home. So that's why I ask you what this term suggests. Overseas. Okay? Selling dollars means that a lot of them who are holding on to US dollar, a lot of people like to hold on to US dollar because it's a good store of wealth. Good store of income. Because US dollar, timeless. Everyone also use international currency. Okay? At this point in time, they are selling their dollars. In exchange for what? What do you think they are exchanging it for? And other foreign currency. To prepare for the cost of rebuilding the domestic economy. So what is happening? They are likely to change to Japanese yen, right? So how does this impact this yen? Quantity of yen, price of yen. In this case here, let's assume in US dollar. Demand, supply. Which one actually affected because of this? Demand for yen actually increased. And this caused your Japanese yen to appreciate in value. Can you see that? So this appreciation will, you see, it is feared that this will make exports more expensive. Does it go in line with what you actually see here? Appreciation here will make exports become more expensive in foreign currency. Alright? And choke off the hope for export-led recovery. Alright, so because of this appreciation, your export-led recovery, you thought that you can depend on your export to help drive your economy back into shape, all wiped out because right now exports become more expensive because of the appreciation. Okay, huge cost of rebuilding the affected areas will also push up Japan's public debt. So Japan's government is in debt. Foreign government as well as local, because they sell bonds. They sell bonds. Bonds are basically paper to say that, oh, I owe you this amount after a period of time. We have it in Singapore. We have Singapore bonds as well. Just that Singapore don't depend on debt to borrow. Singapore, we have our huge reserves, okay, from past years, okay, that we can turn to without any worry. Alright, next one. Bank of Japan, I'm sure, will be on high alert, doing everything in its power to stop the yen becoming too strong. Because by doing so, alright, Japan export-led recovery will definitely not happen. Alright, not just that, they also want to provide the banking sector with all the liquidity it may require. As part of rebuilding, your producers want to undertake more investment and all, right? They need to borrow. So the central bank is looking to inject liquidity in by increasing money supply. By increasing money supply, my interest rate will fall. And then people will borrow to rebuild and so on and so forth. That's this sentence, the implication of this. Okay? So imperative to get these factories open again, because strong yen here actually make exports more expensive. So we shut down all the firms, the economy will suffer severely. Alright? Ken? Extract 2, breaking it down again. Okay, we have that Japan has been in recession because 2 consecutive quarters in a row. Alright? Most worrying part is that private consumption fell 0.6%. Private consumption accounts for almost 60%. Alright, so this tells us how significant consumption as a proportion is of Japan's GDP. Alright, remember we discussed about, in deciding which component of your AD to boost when you want to boost your national income, you need to be mindful about the nature of the economy. Alright, is this economy trade dependent? Alright, is the population size large enough to sustain? Okay, if I depend on consumption to drive the growth. Usually, we answer this question by saying we don't just focus on one component. We make use of a combination of policy to ensure that all components actually are addressed and we push them all up together at the same time. You get what I'm trying to say? No. Because certain question could ask, should I focus on C to boost growth? Should I focus on I to boost growth? Or should I focus on G to boost growth? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So we need to say
It depends on the nature, and then ultimately your advice or recommendation here is to use a combination of policy, everything, yes. Alright, always the case. Alright, second paragraph or second extract. We know that trade in Japan suffered. Okay, on the export side, production has not been restored. Ongoing struggle to restore damaged production lines. And it's not as much as what they used to sell. So it affects them. Alright, on the import side, because of the destruction, they cannot rely on nuclear energy anymore. So what they have actually done is they switched to fossil fuel. And this actually increased the demand for fossil fuel in Japan. Import lah. Oh. Alright. Can? Okay, then the last paragraph here, ultimately, okay, this part here, ultra loose monetary policy. Do we have a tight monetary policy? This monetary policy is referring to which one? Exchange rate or interest rate? Interest rate, how do you know? What evidence do we have to say that this is interest rate? Okay, that's one. What else? That you don't usually measure exchange rate in 0.1%, 0.2% kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Wait, so that means that like lending money without interest.
It's so drastic that they have to do this. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk more about this in a while. Alright, so tight monetary policy here is what? And what is a loose monetary policy? Down here they say it's ultra loose. You either answer loose or tight for me, so at least you know one from the other. What is ultra loose monetary policy or what is a tight monetary policy?
This means low interest rate. People can borrow free.
Then tight
Like very
high interest rate. Okay, this one means to increase interest rate. This one means to reduce money supply, then interest rate. Ultra loose means you increase money supply, lower interest rate. Okay? Okay? So what they are going to do is they are going to do this. Okay? They are going to boost the... they're going to pump money into the financial system so that there's more money circulating. And because of this increase in money supply, interest rates will go down. Alright? And it's going down to 0.0% to 0.1%. So what does this mean? 0.0%. Like what Ann mentioned, Ann said that, this means that people borrow without having to pay any cost. Yes. Have you heard of negative interest rates? Never. Real work or not? God. Japan they have, in Europe they have as well.
So it's like legit free money.
Free money. What? Negative interest rate is not free money.
But they pay you like.
So let's say $1,000 deposit. I give you 1% interest in 1 month's time. Okay? So, what this means is that at the end of 1 month, if I put this with the bank, my interest rate is 1%, I get back $10. Right or not? But if it's negative interest rate, this means that at the end of the month, how much do I get back? 990. So bank is charging you money to put the money in the bank. So what does this force you to do? Force you to take your money out, go and spend, go and invest, go and do something with it. Don't put in the bank. This is a drastic measure, drastic. Okay? Singapore, do we need to adopt this? At this moment, no. But they have considered that because other countries are doing it. If really the need really arise, they may choose to adopt this. I know Japan, they did this. You go and Google, EU, they also did this. Negative interest rate.
How
They pay you to borrow. Okay, usually this does not translate directly the other way around lah. Because this is what you get when you save. But when you borrow, you usually have a different, usually have a spread. Yeah. Spread means that because bank need to make money, right? I lend out, I take this money as saving, I lend out, from there, I must make a profit, that one is another thing altogether. When you're interested, you go to university, you learn banking and finance. We learn that. Okay, they must have a spread lah. Okay, for now, don't go too deep. Alright, I scared later you get lost. Okay, so your intention of doing this, what's the intention of doing this? How effective is this? Alright, what are the limitations of doing this? So, intention is here to boost AD lah, boost C, boost I lah. Right now, how effective? Looking at this, how effective is it? Likely you are at the liquidity trap already. Right now, any impact would have already been felt earlier. 0.0, 0.1, it means that it's really gone case already. Close to, that means you're at the liquidity trap already. Really, no impact. They won't increase anything further. The interest rate won't change any further. Alright. Okay, last extract. What does this whole extract tell us about? Okay, collectively, if we look at it, alright, these are the main points. Spain had a weaker growth than expected. Spain originally expected to grow by 0.7%, but they only grew by 0.1%. So all signs initially pointed to us that, Spain should grow by this amount. But somehow or another, they only grew by 0.7. So government is looking to undertake this. Okay, I'll address this separately. This one, I linked to this one. Okay, why was there a difference in the growth numbers? We expected 0.7%, but what we saw was 0.1%. Okay, what happened here? Because of internal as well as external demand, lower than estimates. Alright, because of this, that's one reason. The other reason is also, the other one is not so much of a reason. Conventional wisdom would be that when I want to boost my national income, I want to increase my AD. Government side, what would they do? They will increase government spending and or decrease tax rates. Correct or not? However, if we look at this context here, government, what is they trying to do? They lower government spending, they increase tax rates. They're actually doing the reverse. Do you see? Why? This is expansionary fiscal policy, right? EFP. BOP? Why do I want to improve BOP? Budget gap is referring to BOP. Why every year you always have this misconception? Budget gap means BOP. This budget here is talking about government's budget. Balance of payment got nothing to do with this. Don't because it got B, then that one is balance of payment. Every year we see this. This is not just the first year. Okay, so please be mindful. Budget here referring to government's budget. Government spending, government revenue minus their spending. Alright, the tax revenue. Okay, so you can see that what they are trying to do, they are in huge debt. You can see what? Spain is in huge debt. They are trying to reduce this. So what they are adopting is what we call austerity. Austerity is what very popular term of last few years. Okay? In the European countries especially, countries where they are in debt. Countries where they are in debt, they adopt austerity measures. Let me explain the difference. Down here, what is my primary intention? If I use EFP, I'm trying to boost my AD. I want to bring growth to my economy. Intention of austerity measure is not to contract the economy. Intention of this austerity measure is to, what's the intention here? What's my intended consequence? I want to reduce my debt. The side effect here, on the other hand, is, what's the side effect you talk about? Yes. Do you see a difference? You need to ask yourself, what is the intention? Intention here is not to, because we already given that the economy is not performing up to expectation, right? They were expected to hit 0.7% growth, but they only hit 0.1%. Then it will go against what should be recommended if I actually go and contract the economy by doing this. So the intention is not to contract the economy, but really to lower the debt. Okay, right, try to reduce the debt amount that they have, the budget shortfall that they have. Can? Got that? Okay? So this part here should be okay lah. Alright? Any particular part that you're not clear with for this table? Okay. This portion here is basically an accumulation from past years because this is a debt. Okay, debt by its nature means that it's already, you owe already. So cannot be negative lah. It can be negative. Negative means that they actually lend other country money. You get what I mean? So don't go and do a double deficit, the double negative thing. Government budget balance, okay, that one is each year. They will have a new budget balance. So each year you will take on a different value. Alright? Balance of trade. What is balance of trade? Balance of trade is basically the difference between the value of all the goods and services a country exports and the goods and services that it imports. So in looking at this, which value should I be looking at? So what should I do? In this case here, I want to compare the change. I need to have one similarity, one difference. Alright? Balance of trade, I need to know the position first. Positive, negative, correct? And then how it has changed. Alright, so if we look at what we have, you can see that in Japan, this one is positive. You know why positive? 13 minus 12 because they are all common value, right? So we can let that minus away. This is positive. This one? Negative. This one? Negative, negative, negative. So what is one similarity is basically these 2 years. Deficit. Correct or not? My difference, however, is that this 2 year was surplus, then became deficit. This one, on the other hand, was deficit, then became surplus. The movement was different, different directions. Do you see that? Okay, that's 2 marks. Got that? Can? I'll move on. Account for the change in balance of trade position in 2010 and 2011. So 2010, 2011. 2010 it was in surplus. 2011 it was in deficit. So what this meant is that 2010 the value of goods and services that was exported out was more than what we imported in. Right or not? In 2011 it's the reverse. What we export out was less in value compared to what we import in. That's why we had a deficit. Correct? So this can be due to 2 reasons. Either because this one is basically x minus m. So either x decrease or m increase. Correct or not? 4 marks. You need 2 points. 1 point on this, 1 point on this. Okay? So what is one possible reason for a fall in export revenue? What is one possible reason for an increase in import expenditure? Okay? So with that in mind, alright, what is one possible reason for a fall in export revenue? Because of the shutdown. Because of the disruption. The amount of exports that I can export out has reduced. So export revenue fall. This is assuming no change in the price of my exports. Alright. However, if you assume that price of exports did change the price, which is realistic in the real world, then you know that when there's a fall in supply of exports, assuming demand stays the same, price will increase. Correct or not? And then assuming demand for export is price elastic, you see a fall in export revenue. Because there will be a more than proportionate fall in quantity demanded. Okay? So this is one reason. Either or, okay, 2 marks. Exchange rate, you're given that appreciation happened. Appreciation will cause X to decrease, M to increase. Correct? So this one also a possible reason. Correct? Exchange rate, appreciation. Okay? What also happened was that higher commodity prices. With higher commodity prices, commodity here referring to your raw materials, like your oil, your wheat, etc. So all this actually means that higher import expenditure. Alright, last but not least, increased import expenditure due to higher demand for fossil fuel. Because Japan, after the nuclear disaster, they have to switch to fossil fuel for the energy source. That's why they actually have spent more on import expenditure. Okay? Because demand here is price inelastic. Price increase, your M will increase. Because this one, higher demand for fossil fuel. So the price here will increase. Alright, the quantity demanded, okay, fall less than proportionately. Alright, so M actually increase. Got that? Can? Alright, let's take a quick break. Alright. Give 2 minutes, so we'll resume at 3:33. Who? What did she say? She said that meant that people could take loan without cost of borrowing. 0%. I pay back very little if it's 0.1, or I don't pay at all for borrowing money. Okay? You finish copying this? Okay. It's got B, C, D, E. Okay, they are coming back. Can we get back? Okay, so now we look at the next question. All right. Let's look at the next question, okay? How GDP growth might affect the government's budget balance. So government budget balance is this. All right, government revenue minus government spending. Okay? Right? Government's budget is government revenue minus government spending, right? So you do know that GDP growth, when we talk about GDP growth, when it's positive, basically incomes are increasing. What does it mean? Where does government get the revenue from? So when income increase, revenue is likely to increase. All right. When GDP growth is negative, incomes are likely to decrease. Government is likely to spend on unemployment benefits. The tax they receive also reduce. Correct or not? Yeah. Okay. So what's this implication? All right, if you look at these numbers, you can see that from this year to this year, there was positive economic growth, right? Your budget balance improved, became better, became smaller. Right or not? This year to this year become negative, right? This one worsened. Do you see? This year to this year became positive again. It improved, but by smaller amount. Correct or not? Same for this case, if you go and analyze, okay? So, due to the fact that when there's positive GDP growth, this also means that incomes are generally increasing. An increase in the amount of taxes the government collect, thus improving the government's budget balance. Or, you talk about incomes fall, government collect less tax and increase spending. Alright, for social welfare or anything, then this will worsen the budget balance. Got it? Can? Can I move on to the next slide? Yeah?
When you say with reference to data, do we have to mention numbers?
No need. Just highlighting that. Yeah, with reference to that. Okay? Okay, this one, now don't have time. So you go back, you take note of this. This is a template. This one will be on Dropbox. Okay? Go and make sure you know this because this is a template. You know that circular flow of income and your ADS, they are your framework. You know what frameworks are, right? Like your demand supply analysis. You need to really use them, okay, in order to score marks. So make sure you now answer this kind of question. Should the question be on this? Okay, so circular flow, not just BT, not just prelim, but also at A level. Make sure at each assessment you run through at least once. So what I encourage, this is just template. This is what it is in actual fact, how you translate it down. Okay? For a 6 marks question. I'll run through this in detail. Alright, but what you need to go back to do is basically at least go back, write it out once on your own. If you don't, you are cutting yourself short. Because if your teacher is going to do this for you, you don't write down everything, then losing end is your end. Okay? Because I can easily give you this whole thing. I don't need to give out the template. But if I do the template, break it down for you, you don't want to make use of it, then you are really cutting yourself short because it's presented in your face. You are losing the mark because of you not doing it. Alright? So, basically, any circular flow question, we always define first. And that's where I get my first mark. Alright? Second mark is given when I talk about this equilibrium level of national income. Make sure you highlight J equal W at initial equilibrium level. Always assume that initially they were at equilibrium. Because that's where we always begin. Alright? And then, right now, because of what we are given, government spending cuts as well as tax increase. So, G decrease, T increase. What is this impact on here? I, G, and X. S, T, and M. Originally, they were equal to one another. But then this one decreased, this one increased. So, my J becomes less. My J becomes less than W. Alright, and when my J less than W, this means that I have surplus. I have accumulation of inventories. Alright, So what this signals to producers is that producers need to cut back on production. As a result of cutting back on production, they hire fewer factors of production. Incomes here will fall. When incomes fall, S, T, and M will fall. And your withdrawal, originally which was higher than J, will now come back down and equal to your J at a lower equilibrium level of income. Understand this whole process, procedure, and everything? Okay? Alright. Can Okay. Got that This one. Now ADAS, again I give you template. What happened to AD? Impact on AD. What happened to AS? Impact on AS. How does it impact the economy? So let's try this on our, okay, when we have earthquake and tsunami, what happens to AD? Components of AD. That's all? X minus M. Got 4 not? So these are basically this. AD shift left. Okay, shift left lah. Alright. What happened to AS? SRAS is affected by cost of production. LRAS is affected by QQFOP lah. Right not? So cost of production got affected not? Cost of production increase, right? COP increase, so SRAS decrease. LRAS also decrease. So yours, not a L shape, wait. So what we have here is basically your economy So your economy AD1 to AD2 in the short run. No, you still have your this one. Okay, AD1, this was original equilibrium, this is P1. Okay, final equilibrium. Okay, in the short run, it will be here. No, not there. In the short run, your SRAS increase, your SRAS decrease, AD decrease. So AD will fall to AD2, and then you find here. This is Y2, this is P2. Okay? Long run, okay, will be your AS curve increase. So this one will be Y3. Understand? No, sorry. Wait, okay, I think I better draw it out. Let me draw it properly. Okay, I think this one you don't need to draw your breakdown. Wait, you just talk about from which point. So this one is original AS. This is GPL. This is AD. Y1, P1. AD2, your AS2. Okay, so you can have it here. This is what eventually happened. Okay, this one fell and this one increased. Okay, this is what eventually happened. Then you talk about how your YF from YF1 became YF2. Actual growth, you have negative economic growth. Then potential, you also have negative potential growth. Okay? Alright, so how does this impact the economy? Basically, C, I, and my X minus M all fell. And then AD4. Make sure you explain why, YC4, YI4, YX4. Okay? Because of the rise in cost of production of your higher commodity prices, COP increase. Twin disaster, okay, that's why there's a fall in SRAS, because rise in greater competition for resources. Earthquake, QQFOP actually suffer, so LRAS will fall. Alright, so with all this, basically the impact here, you need to talk about what happened with GPL, what happened to RNY, and your employment. Because question here is on internal impact. Understand? We talk about internal impact, we look at these three areas, right? Yeah, so you need to talk about these three. Okay? Alright, last question is basically effectiveness of policy. I think the policies part I've touched on earlier. We just do a quick recap again. Alright, so in this question, recession, we talk about 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. Alright, when we talk about expansionary fiscal policy, what is going to happen here is, remember we talk about G. G, increase. And all this help to increase AD. G in the long run will help to restore your LRAS back. Whether it goes back to original level or not is subjective. If you assume that it went back original level, fine, no problem. If it goes back to original level, yes. If not, then smaller than that is also okay. We don't fault you for anything. But you need to tell us that LRAS does increase, okay, in the long run. Question here is, can I bring in tax or not? Because if you read the extract, did they suggest anything about tax rates being affected? So fiscal policy is and or ma. You get what I mean? Government and or your tax rates. So in this case here, tax rates, we don't need to bring in. But your seniors, they brought in. But that's why we actually accepted it. However, there's no explicit evidence. So that's why we were quite lenient for them. But if your case, learn from their mistakes. Alright, so don't do that if they never tell you. Unless it's mentioned, if not, don't assume. Okay? Limitation here is, in Singapore's context, we know that Singapore, we have prudent fiscal position, so we can actually spend. Japan cannot. They don't seem to have the capability because their budget, they are in deficit. They are in debt, huge public debt. Correct or not? So, not encouraged to do so. How much they can, there's a limit. They have to increase the public borrowing, okay, to fund this, so leading to crowding out effect. Alright? Expansionary monetary policy. Okay, expansionary monetary policy. BOJ, Bank of Japan, should they use the ultra loose monetary policy or should they not do anything about it? Okay, basically what they done is monetary policy, you talk about money supply increase. This will actually lead to the lower interest rate. Lower interest rate, C and I will increase. Advantage here is C here is a large contributor to Japan's economy. We're given this, right? So we can use it to our advantage. Limitation here, however, is that it's already at 0, near 0. No room for them to further decrease. Really, you need to look at the outlook of the economy. Alright, how are the consumers and investors reacting? Alright, it seems to be the case that they have a very pessimistic outlook. So even if you were to bring it to 0, nobody is going to spend, nobody is going to consume. Alright? So this will have very little effect on stimulating C and I. Okay? Exchange rate policy, we don't know which direction it went. Did they depreciate or not? Alright? But what we know is that they are concerned about it becoming too strong. So they are likely to limit the appreciation. How much you appreciate by. Okay? Then this is where I bring in the trilemma issue. Seems to be the case Japan focusing more on interest rate policy because interest rate they explicitly say something. Correct or not? Exchange rate we can just infer that they can actually use it. Excuse me. But we are aware that there's trilemma. They can't use interest rate and exchange rate both at the same time. Okay? So highlight this off. Alright? Alright, since Japan has the first two, any intervention in the foreign exchange market will only lead to short-term changes in the exchange rate and therefore exchange rate will be brought back to the market rate again. A further limitation of this. Can? Evaluation basically, to boost economic growth, we need to be mindful of both long-term and short-term growth. Long-term, we want to have potential growth. Short-term, we want actual growth. These two have to be considered. So far, our policies seem to be focused really on AD, on the demand side. AS, yes, we did have the supply side effect from fiscal policy. From monetary policy, by right should have as well. From the interest rate decrease, I should increase, right? However, you want to really say, hey, government, let's do something about the supply side policy. Let's have it together with these demand side policies, so that we can have a combination of policies. All right. Instead of an expansionary fiscal policy, government may want to implement fiscal consolidation, similar to your austerity measure, to par down their government debt, so that they can maintain the market confidence. Because if country carry on building up on this debt, it will not really encourage confidence of consumer as well as investors in your economy. I mean, instead of going to Japan, I go to somewhere else to do business. All right, because I'm not very confident of your economy and how strong it is. Okay,
What's fiscal consolidation?
something like your austerity measure, yeah. Then par down your government debt, reduce the government debt.